I'm sure we've all heard the quote, Black Lives Matter. While Black Lives Matter is not a new movement for change, it was brought back up to become a huge deal shortly after the murder of George Floyd, an African American who tragically died, pinned to the ground with the knee of a white police officer to his neck. GoodHousekeeping.com states that the goal of the Black Lives Matter movement is simply to speak out against the police brutality and systemic racism that caused the recent deaths of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, and Breonna Taylor, as well as the thousands of violent incidents that happen to Black people that are not recorded, are not reported, or are not afforded the outrage they deserve. The need for change has been around for decades, but an article by Tina K. Stacks states that the increase in cell phone videos and postings on social media sites has led to a groundswell of advocacy and activism. This is why Black Lives Matter has blown up in 2020. Many protests have been held around the United States for this movement, making history. Maybe you have even participated in a protest. The New York Times states that in just one day, 500,000 people turned out to protest in nearly 550 places across the United States. Black Lives Matter has become the largest movement in U.S. history. Every year, more and more attention is being paid to police brutality and racism within the Black community. However, people of the Hispanic community are being left out of this movement. Racism not only occurs within the Black community, but also with Hispanics. While lots of Hispanics and Latinos are participating in the Black Lives Matter protests, they are also trying to draw attention to the racism they are facing too. Many use the saying, Black and Brown Lives Matter, or Black-Brown Unity. Out of 19 students that submitted a response to a survey I recently conducted, 100% of them said that they have heard more about racism towards Blacks than racism towards Hispanics and Latinos. This is because, for some odd reason, Hispanics are often forgotten about. The history of anti-Latino violence in the U.S. has gone unnoticed. Schools mainly focus on teaching the history of African American racism and do not tend to teach students about racism towards other races, especially Hispanics and Latinos. You most likely haven't heard about Manuel Diaz, Anthony Nunez, Marissa Ventura, or Antonio Valenzuela, a Mexican-American man that was killed by a police officer in Las Cruces, New Mexico, in the summer of 2020. It is reported that Valenzuela was running away from the police after committing a small parole violation when Officer Christopher Smelser says,
I'm gonna choke you out, bro.
Smelser ended up killing Valenzuela by a chokehold similar to the way that George Floyd was murdered, with absolutely no reason to kill him. An article from ABC News states that Las Cruces, a city where nearly 60% of residents are Hispanic, recorded a rate of police killings of 26 for every million residents. Family and friends of Valenzuela's, along with the people of Las Cruces, are still fighting for justice. ABC News states that Latino advocates and families of those killed by police say they aren't trying to pull the focus away from Black lives, but want to illustrate their own suffering from policing and systemic racism. According to the Washington Post, Hispanics are killed at the second highest rate of 24 per million residents, following just behind Black Americans at a rate of 33 per million residents. From the text of Political Behavior, at more than 50 million people, Hispanics have supplanted African Americans as the largest minority group in the United States. So, as the large Black Lives Matter movement is for a great cause and is supported by millions of people, Latinos face police brutality and systemic racism almost just as much as African Americans, but it goes unnoticed. Change is necessary for not only African Americans, but Hispanics too. Thank you.